Welcome back to the last video in the series in which we've been analysing the alleged errors in Luke's genealogy. In this video, we're going to be talking about Neri and Rhesa. So let's clear the board and we're going to begin to talk about Neri first. So the question is, who on earth is Neri? Who is this guy? Now let's compare Luke's genealogy to the genealogy in the Old Testament. Now in the Old Testament, we're given the royal line of descent. This is a line of kings. And as you can see, Luke does not use this genealogy from the Old Testament. He deviates from the royal lineage. Yet despite the fact that he deviates from the royal lineage, he still incorporates Shealtiel and Zerubbabel, which now presents us with a problem because they appear out of nowhere. We know that Shealtiel's father is Jehoiakim, yet Luke, because he rejects the royal line, puts his father as someone called Neri. Let's first begin by just discussing the fact that it's very significant that Luke rejects the royal line of succession. This point is made by Johnson in his book The Purpose of Biblical Genealogies. He notes, perhaps the most surprising aspect of the Lucan genealogy is its rejection of the royal line of Judah. Rather than enumerating the royal succession from David to the exile, as does Matthew, Luke proceeds from David to his third son, born in Jerusalem, Nathan, and from him through a series of unknown names up to Shealtiel and Zerubbabel, and thence again through a series of unknown names to Joseph. So here he realizes that Luke has rejected the royal lineage all the way up to Shealtiel and Zerubbabel. He still incorporates these names. Why has he done this? Fitzmyer in his commentary notes the peculiarity of the inclusion of these names. He notes, in this person, referring to Shealtiel, the Lucan and Matthean genealogies touch, along with Shealtiel and Zerubbabel, amid a long list of differing names. The appearance of them in the Matthean list does not surprise us. That they should suddenly turn up at this point in the Lucan is surprising. So this is very strange that they just appear out of nowhere. In Matthew we expect it because Matthew gives us the royal lineage, but Luke doesn't. So why has he included them? Well, this has led many people to speculate as to why, and let me just give you a few. Well, let me give you the main reason why people think so. And if you notice, I mentioned this in Matthew's video about the curse of Jeconiah. So as you know, Jeconiah was cursed that none of his descendants would sit on the throne. Refer back to my video on the curse of Jeconiah in Matthew's genealogy. And Wayne Talbot, in his popular book, notes, we read the son of Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, the son of Neri, in Luke 3:27. Who was Neri? There is no trace in the Tanakh of a person so named. So it is suggested that Luke was trying to hide the truth of Jeconiah's curse from his readers. So in other words, the reason why Luke puts Neri there is because he doesn't want to put Jehoiakim, because according to Jeremiah 22, Jehoiakim is cursed. And Luke sees this curse as still being present, and hence, if he was to include Jehoiakim in his genealogy, it would not allow Jesus to be the Messiah. So he has put Neri here in order to cover the wool over our eyes. Is this correct? Well, it is the major reason that scholars take. This is the preferred option. For instance, Sarah Harris notes the most widely accepted view is that Luke avoids the kingly line of Solomon to Jeconiah because he is aware of Jeremiah's prophecy to Jehoiakim that his son Jeconiah would not sit on the throne of David, and that the line from Jeconiah would cease. So this is the favorite opinion of scholars. Now, just to reassure you, as we talked about in our Curse of Jeconiah video, we know that the curse was reversed. Jeremiah is told that Jeconiah would be taken off the hand of God like a signet ring. But then, when we come to the book of Haggai, we're told that Zerubbabel, Jeconiah's grandson, would be placed back onto God's hand like a signet ring. Hence, this tells us that the curse was reversed. Yet we're still left, so we know that the curse is no longer in effect. So why does Luke still feel the necessity to exclude Jehoiakim? And we honestly don't know why. Perhaps Luke did not realize the curse was reversed. We simply are left speculating as to why he would do it, and none of the speculation is fruitful. So let's now go to our criteria and ask whether or not this is a contradiction. And technically it is, because you can only have one father. Perhaps a Levirate marriage is happening here. We simply do not know. But because we are clearly told in the Old Testament that Jeconiah is the father of Shealtiel, I'm inclined to call this a mistake, simply because we are given no other reason for thinking that his father is Neri. So that's my reasoning there, but again, you can disagree with my reasoning. The inclusion of Neri is just very strange considering the fact that the curse of Jeconiah is reversed. Why does Luke still feel possessed to exclude him from his genealogy? I'm going on and on. Let's continue. It's just very strange. Let's now go to our second issue, which is the inclusion of Rhesa. Rhesa is very similar to Neri in its complication. And we're left asking, who on earth is Rhesa? If we compare Luke to the royal line again, in the royal line in the Old Testament, we are told who Zerubbabel's children are. For instance, in 1 Chronicles 3:19-24, we're told that the sons of Zerubbabel were Meshuliah, Hananiah, their sister was Shemaiah, his 5 other sons were these guys. So we're told all the sons of Zerubbabel, and none of them are called Rhesa. So where on earth has Luke gotten this name? And this is something that both Luke and Matthew have in common. It's their departure from the Old Testament. Why doesn't Luke just incorporate all the names the Old Testament gives us? For instance, Luke has all these unknown names. Why doesn't he give us the names given in the Old Testament? For instance, the sons of Hananiah are given, so you can see here, the line is traced through Hananiah, and we're given all his sons all the way down to Illinois. So why doesn't Luke, and for Matthew, just incorporate the names given to us by the Old Testament? Why don't they do this? And again, we are left scratching our heads. We're left with just mere speculation. You know, if I was writing a genealogy of Jesus, I would just copy out exactly word for word what I saw in the Old Testament up until the point where I'm given no more names. And this is the point where I'm given no more names. So I would stop here, and then from here, I would consult another genealogy. Yet Luke, for whatever reason, instead of incorporating the Old Testament genealogy, just starts putting in his own names. Perhaps Luke has a source that gives another son of Zerubbabel, in this case, Rhesa. We're left again with speculation. We can't say anything too definitively here. I also want to make note of the fact that many scholars are going to say that Rhesa is perhaps an Aramaic form of the word for prince used to describe Zerubbabel. Let me just read to you what Bock writes. He writes, "It has been argued that this is not a personal name, referring to Rhesa, but an Aramaic form of the word for prince used to describe Zerubbabel. However, 2 problems exist for this suggestion. First, if this is a comment, then one must posit a very early textual corruption for which no extant manuscript evidence. Second, there is no other name in Luke's list to receive elaboration. So the idea that Rhesa is an Aramaic form for the word prince to describe Zerubbabel, this is what some scholars are going to suggest, but the majority of scholars are just going to outrightly reject it. It is far too speculative. There's no real reason for thinking so. No other person in Luke's genealogy is given this kind of elaboration to call Zerubbabel a prince, and there's no manuscript evidence for it. Bock continues to say, it is to be noted nonetheless that the retention of the name is regarded as a problem as well, since other genealogies of Zerubbabel do not list Rhesa as a descendant. Either there is a textual problem in Luke, or Luke gives an additional descendant at this point. So either there's a textual problem, or Luke simply has more information as to who Zerubbabel's son is. And that's why when we come to asking the question of whether or not this is a mistake, I'm inclined to say that the inclusion of Rhesa is not a mistake. I can't give it a tick, but the reason I wouldn't give it a cross is because perhaps we don't have all of Zerubbabel's sons. We gave Neri a cross because you can only have one father. You can only have one father. Is Shealtiel's father Neri or Jeconiah? It can only be one or the other. So there we have a pretty hard contradiction. But here, when it comes to Zerubbabel's son, although in 1 Chronicles chapter 3 we're given a list of Zerubbabel's sons, nothing nothing eliminates the idea that perhaps that's not an extensive list, and perhaps he did have another son called Rhesa, and Luke simply has additional information. But again, it's speculative, so I wouldn't want to give it a tick, I wouldn't want to give it a cross, I'll give it a question mark. So there you go, we have worked through all of the alleged errors in Luke's genealogy, and I think you can confidently say that 2 are kind of errors, and the other 2 are neither errors nor can they be resolved. We're just kind of left scratching our head. So hopefully these videos have been helpful to you. If they have, please give them a thumbs up, just so I know that someone out there is watching. And yeah, in the next video series, we're going to begin to compare Matthew and Luke with each other. So thus far, we've simply dealt with Matthew by itself and Luke's genealogy by itself. But in the next few videos, we're going to be comparing and contrasting them. And that's going to be real fun. And I hope to see you there. See ya.